Oh my goodness. Can y'all believe it? Texas football is finally back. Who would have thought that this day would actually come where we would see the Longhorns playing in the college football playoffs, man? And when I said that Texas was going to make it to the playoffs before the season started, everybody was saying, here you go. Everybody always hypes up Texas and they never live up to the hype. Well, they did this year, people. And now that they're in the playoffs, they got a really good chance to win it all this season. If you're looking at one of the most explosive teams in college football, you're talking about Texas, okay? They have probably the most talented offense compared to the rest of the other three teams that are in the playoff field this year. They got a great offensive line. They got an incredible deep group of running backs. Their starting running back got injured. He's out for the remainder of this season. It doesn't matter. They still have guys coming in and making big plays on the ground. But when you look at this passing attack, Quinn Ewers, when he's on and he's consistent, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. And this receiving core is just as good as Washington's. Now, Washington's wide receiving core, they're just a few notches better than Texas because I believe that they got 3 potential first-round NFL wide receivers, especially Roma Dunze. He's a monster, but Texas, they're not too far off. You got Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, Jordan Whittington. You got a really good tight end. Most of these defenses that are in the playoffs this year, they're going to have a hard time trying to slow down this offense. They're balanced. They can beat you throwing the football downfield, explosive plays out of Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell, and he also can get explosive plays on the ground. But this defense is just as good as the offense. The secondary is a big concern, especially going against Washington in the semifinal matchup. But outside of Washington, if Texas has to play Alabama or Michigan in the national championship, it's a mismatch. We saw what they did when they went on the road and beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Not anybody can just beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. A lot of people have to realize that. Alabama has only lost at home a handful of times under Nick Saban. They haven't lost more than, 5-6 times the last couple of years? Prior to Texas beating Alabama at Alabama, the only 2 teams to do that previously were Ole Miss when they had Hugh Freeze and that 2019 Joe Burrow-led LSU team. That was it. So when you look at Texas, this team is legit. And this defense is just as good as the offense. They got a really good front seven. They got great linebackers. They got defensive linemen that can get after your quarterback. They're going to be a hard matchup if they got to go up against Alabama or Michigan. And I truthfully believe that whoever wins this game between Washington and Texas is most likely going to win the national championship. This defense, you can't run on them. They're 4th in America in rushing yards per game allowed. You can't score on them in the red zone. They have a top 5 red zone defense. They have the best third down defense in college football. They're 10th in points per game allowed. They're 20th in yards per game allowed. The only thing that gives you concern if you're a Longhorns fan is how your secondary is going to hold up against Michael Penix and those Washington Husky wide receivers. They're the only team really in this year's playoff that perfectly matches up against Texas. Texas' biggest weakness on defense, that's Washington's biggest strength on offense, their ability to throw the football and generate big plays. But if you can get past Washington and you got to play Bama or Michigan, you're most likely going to win it all. Texas is a complete team. They don't really have too many glaring weaknesses other than their corners and their safeties. That's about it. Steve Sarkisian, he's one of the best play callers in the sport. You know that he's always going to call the best plays to have Quinn Ewers in the best situation that has success. And Quinn Ewers, he's been really lights out this season. He missed a little bit of a stretch due to injuries, but he's been way more consistent in 2023 compared to how he was his first season starting for Texas. Texas, they're back, people, and they are good enough to win it all potentially. I know it sounds crazy that we're talking about Texas being able to win a national championship because it's been a while, but this team is really scary. The more talented in my opinion, than Michigan and Alabama this year. If you're looking at this team from a pure talent standpoint, they're the most talented team in the playoffs this year. Not just based on how they performed on the field, but if you look at the talent that they have from the transfer portal in recruiting, Michigan and Bama, they're not as good as what Texas is. And you see Alabama and Michigan, the reason why they're such a bad matchup for Texas is because these are teams that are predicated on running the football. Yes, they have the ability to throw the football, but they need the run game to open up the pass game. Texas doesn't allow that to happen. Therefore, if Alabama or Michigan are going up against Texas in the Natty, they're not really going to have a lot of success offensively. Michigan isn't a team that's built to beat you throwing the football. Texas secondary isn't good, but Jalen Milroe isn't the kind of quarterback that's good enough to exploit a weak secondary or a questionable secondary. Go back and look at the game the first time these two teams played against each other. It wasn't pretty when they slowed down the run game of the Tide. Michigan, we haven't really seen a game this past year when J.J. McCarthy has had to carry Michigan with his arm. But you remember last time when Michigan had to ask J.J. McCarthy to throw the ball 30 plus, it didn't look pretty when they lost to TCU. Texas and Washington are most likely going to be the teams that win it all. I believe Texas has a really great chance to do it. Not really saying that Washington does have a chance because you guys know how I feel about Washington. I truthfully believe that they're going to be able to win it all. But Texas, they make it really hard for me to make that decision. And I'm still kind of on the fence about who I have being able to win the playoffs this year. But I'm either going with either Texas or Washington. That's going to be my pick. But these are my reasons for why Texas can win the national championship in 2024.